Just before you get started, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us again tonight. Your presentation, Ted and Mike and Father John, everybody was so well received last time that really there was a demand to have it done a second time. And we appreciate you offering it to us this evening. We are recording this. The little red light in the upper left-hand corner keeps telling me so. So we'll be able to share this across the Metropolis. So I just wanted to offer my thanks to Father John and a brief introduction. Father Chalumas has been at Holy Trinity since August of 1993. And in his ministry there has seen the church grow and flourish, and even to the point where they built a new facility 1995, Father? Do I have that right, or am I year wrong?
2013 we opened, 5 years ago.
I'm sorry, I confused you completely with a different parish. But anyway, he and his stewardship committee are going to offer this presentation tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Father, and thank you again.
You're welcome, and thank you. It's a joy for us to be here. Let's begin with a prayer, please. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ, the true light who enlightens and sanctifies everyone who comes into the world, let the light of your countenance be marked upon us, that in it we may see the unapproachable light, and direct our steps in your commandments, through the prayers of your all-pure Mother, and of all the saints. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Stacy. What a joy it is to be able to offer this evening from the fireside room here of the new Holy Trinity Church. I'd like to first thank His Eminence for the opportunity to do this presentation this evening, and also let everybody know that's watching either live or will be watching this webinar recorded, that there are a lot of professional sources that you can go to for stewardship these days, including a number of Orthodox sources and resources within our archdiocese. We are not one of them. What we do have to offer basically is experience and some of the lessons that we have learned here at Holy Trinity Church over the past 25 years. Wanted to make a note that the first seminar was presented the morning or the week of the Super Bowl. And I made mention at that time, and I think it's still relevant, that one of the things that left me very impressed was at the end of the Super Bowl, the coach, the owner, and a player appeared and all dedicated their win to the glory of God. Well, so do we here at Holy Trinity Church. As Psalm 118 says, this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. We have simply offered, as is appropriate, our time, our talents, and our treasures, and God has blessed them, so we are here to share that story. There are 4 sessions this evening. I'll be offering a series of explanations and some history, some building blocks and foundations in the context of lessons that we have learned. Then Charlie Petrides, who is here this evening with us, is going to talk about taking stewardship to the next level. Charlie is the father of our new One Holy Trinity stewardship approach, and he's got some exciting things to share with you. Mike Cordiotis, who was on our stewardship committee from its very founding, is taking stewardship to from the point of view of stewardship being more than just money, and how stewardship is woven into the entire life of Holy Trinity Church. And Ted Stewart is going to be talking about making stewardship personal, and how stories of Holy Trinity Church's personal impact on members of the community have been shared and how they have been responded to. Mike and Ted are our current stewardship chair people. Charlie continues to assist them in carrying the torch, but has been our stewardship chairperson for a number of years before that, and I'm very, very thankful for all their work and for having them here this evening. So I'm going to give you the first 10 minutes, and it is lessons that we have learned from stewardship. There are going to be 17 brief points during this, which I'll go through rather quickly. Don't worry about taking copious notes on them, because Stacy has a document that he'll be able to share with you on each of these lessons, or with the collection of them. So let me start with a brief history of Holy Trinity Church's stewardship ministry and how we adopted it. I arrived by the appointment of His Eminence Metropolitan Maximus, as Stacy said, in the August of 1993. And although this community was indeed built on the sacrifices of love of many generations before that, that date is the start of the modern concept of stewardship as the sustaining support system for the life of this parish. So, lesson 1, build on the successes of the past and recognize them. Well, why at that time and why me? I had had the opportunity of serving in Holy Cross Church in the other section of Pittsburgh as a lay assistant and an assistant priest, and I had 7 years of experience for what was one of the early adopter parishes in the Metropolis regarding stewardship. So Metropolitan Maximus asked me to use what I had learned there and bring it to Holy Trinity and adopt it here. Lesson 2, learn from other successful models. It was by no means a solitary or a clergy-only effort, and the main driving force behind it was former Holy Trinity Parish Council President Gus Georgiadis, along with Mike Pridiotis and an entire team. So lesson 3, harvest the talents of individuals who believe in and can develop and promote your stewardship ministry. We spent many hours and weeks developing a custom Holy Trinity program using models from other parishes, but we didn't take anybody's lock, stock, and barrel, and we actually developed our own custom material. So lesson 4 is use existing resources and then adopt them to fit your parish's particular needs. Those resources included an attractive information packet and envelopes and brochures and cards. And they were actually both in Greek and English, and Mike was with us and doing the Greek translation along with some others back in those days. And that was for the purpose of recognizing the demographic makeup of the congregation at the time. And so lesson 5 is engage all constituencies of your parish and leave nobody out so you get a buy-in from the entire parish. Next, we brought in Father Kostas Itaras, who at that time was involved in the Archdiocesan Stewardship Department. And he came to speak to our stewardship committee to give us some advice. He also came to speak to our entire parish. He served the liturgy, gave a beautiful sermon. I remember it to this day because it involved a big bottle of olive oil and so forth. So lesson 6 is use outside resources and professional talent whenever possible. We promoted and explained the program through presentations and through mailings and through reports. We also had phone-a-thons to get people enthused and inform them and to motivate them to submit their pledges. So lesson 7 is promote and build enthusiasm while also being open to feedback and answering questions. Those phone-a-thons were really exciting and wonderful times. We had a chance to bring a lot back to the committee. What were our results? Well, prior to stewardship, when we were on the old, quote, dues system, here's how it worked. Individual membership was $100. Family membership was $300. And our membership income totaled only $40,000. We switched to a no minimum stewardship system, and we have never turned back. So lesson 8, and please mark this one down in bold, stewardship is stewardship, not dues in disguise. We wanted to maintain our integrity. We would have never gotten away with just a change of title. It would have never worked. In 1994, our first year of stewardship, we were blessed with 200 pledges for an average pledge of $214 and a total stewardship income of $48,251. That's a 20% increase in just 1 year. We had a continuously growing level of stewardship from that day to today. In 2017, our most recent year, we had 267 pledges with an average pledge of $1,173 for a total of $320,822 in stewardship income. If you were listening for the math, that's an 800% increase since the inception of the program. And that's even during a building project. So lesson 9 is stewardship always works when done properly and will increase parish income over dues. Do not fear. Next, what about this idea of transforming the heart of the community? We had to do more than just change the way finances were run. We had to transform how we looked at the entire life of the church. And so we had to, quote, convert a number of things. First, we converted perspective. That is, stewardship is not just money, it is the entire involvement in the life of the church. So lesson 10, in your church, everything is stewardship. We also had to convert language, not Greek and English. We converted it from dues to stewardship. And from that time, everything that you saw regarding not only finances, but other involvement in the life of the church became stewardship. So lesson 11 changed the language. We also had to convert systems. We moved from old ways of giving to new ways. We had to go and produce comprehensive statements. We had to have records, online giving, eventually auto deductions. So lesson 12, along the way, adopt new technologies and workflows which integrate stewardship mindset. Then we had to also convert from a religious/business model to a stewardship model involving the clergy, the parish, council, the staff, the stewardship committee, and all of our ministries. Lesson 13 is stewardship is a synergistic process. Everybody has to be on board and have some way to get involved. And then finally, we had to convert from unbelief to belief. As it says in Matthew 9:24, I believe, help my unbelief. So lesson 14, stewardship is an act of faith. It's not a gamble, and it's certainly not just a way to balance your books. So moving on, you need to continually refresh and renew and reinvigorate stewardship on a regular basis. Keep the whole idea fresh. Build momentum. John Maxwell, a Christian leadership expert, says, momentum does not sustain itself. Now, it may not be possible to invent new appeals every year, but at least every few years, incorporate new ideas, new looks, and new themes. Charlie's going to talk to us about that. Try to make them fit the needs of the community, and above all, keep them personal. Lesson 15, keep stewardship fresh and continually build momentum, or it will die. Next, celebrate, harvest, and share the blessings of the community. When the community is growing, let everybody be part of that. In the Old Testament, when the people of God had a victory, they built an altar or a monument to celebrate it. We are building the temple of the Lord in everything that we do to grow the life of the church. Try stewardship lunches, share in the success, and everyone feels invested and part of making it happen. We actually, just a few months ago, had a festival thank you lunch where we just gathered everybody that worked for the festival, our biggest ever in the history of the church, and just provided a free lunch and said, thank you for everything that you do, good stewards. Lesson 16, celebrate stewardship on an entire community level. And finally, constantly develop a stewardship team. I am so grateful to the Lord for the gentlemen behind me and for the ladies on the team. They have brought a tremendous amount of energy and blessings. My co-workers in Christ here deserve much of the credit tonight for the innovative and energetic stewardship ministry that we have at Holy Trinity Church today. I really am truly blessed to be working with them. I learn from them. I'm amazed by them. And I truly thank God for them and for what they will share with you tonight. So lesson 17, build a stewardship team. There are laborers that the Lord has sent to the vineyard, and they are ready to plant along with you. We plant, he will make it grow. To sum up my portion, let me remind you, stewardship is not a job, it's not a task, and it's not a line item. It's a work of prayer and of faith. In his presentation, The Golden Circle, leadership expert Simon Sinek says, people do not buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Likewise with stewardship, they will not become active stewards because you are asking them to do so, but because you are modeling it. You believe it, and you do it for Christ, in Christ, and with Christ. If they don't believe it can work, that's okay. When we needed a roof on our old church about 20 years ago, we couldn't afford to raise $50,000 from our entire community to do that. Back then, we were just asking for money. But in 2008, not that much later, on August 8th, 2008, when we launched the capital campaign, we were able to raise the funds and a plan to open a $9 million new church in which we are this evening, and the associated complex in just 5 years. Why? Because then we were not asking them to pay to repair a building, but rather to make a vision possible. They didn't buy what we were doing. They bought why we were doing it. Glory to God. Charlie, your turn.
Thank you, Father John, and it's a privilege to be here tonight. Father has led the community in this stewardship venue, and I've served on parish council here, grew up here, as did the 2 generations before me. And we have found that all of our blessings in our life come from above, from God, and from the Holy Trinity. So that's the essence of stewardship, that each of us has been blessed to abundantly with our life, our health, and everything that we have. So stewardship is the 3 T's: time, the time that we can give back to our church and to God; our talents that He's graced us with. We give our talents, whether we're working on a food festival or helping in a Sunday school or women working in the Philoptochos. And of course, treasure. The church has expenses to have a church, to have a building, to maintain it, to have utilities, to have a priest, and to contribute to the church and its works and its missions. So time, talent, and treasures, the 3 T's of stewardship. We've embraced that. And as Father said, why are we doing this? Because we have been blessed to have all these abundant blessings individually. And this is how we are called to give back to God and to His church. So I have 6 points tonight. That's the first one: stewardship, the 3 T's. Now, the time and the talents, the first 2 T's I mentioned, are capsulated in our church and in any church in our ministries and our mission of serving for those in our church and for those outside of the church. The mission that God calls us to work upon. As Father John said, if we just talked about dues and obligations and paying, then the finances of the church are like a tax, and people feel like they're being asked or taxed by an entity like a government, which the church is not. We look to stewardship to say, how can we give our own individual time and our own individual talent back to God through His church, and how we can serve. Now, when I was on parish council, Father John and the past president asked me to take on stewardship, to take a lead there. And I thought, boy, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need a lot of time. So I came off the council, found somebody better than me to take my council seat, not vacating it. I moved on to stewardship with the co-chair, Mary Ann Stearns, who I handpicked, who was an excellent worker. I advise and recommend to each parish to find people that are, as Father John said, highly energized, highly committed for the mission of the church, not just raising money to pay for the church's expenses, but to look at time and talent, the ministries and the treasures. Now, we have, as Father John has out, and you'll have in your package, there's a One Holy Trinity card that I'm holding up here. We made this card in order so that we could annually present to each member, each individual and each family member, a capsule of what Holy Trinity is. I don't know why, it was simple. I just came up with one Holy Trinity to capture our church, parish's essence. You can see the picture on the front cover on the right side is at Anastasia, the parishioners holding the Anastasia candles and the petals on the floor for Anastasia service. And our church, the new church that we had built 4.5 years ago, which our parishioners all stepped up. Literally just over 100 families were able to have the vision, as Father said, to contribute and make this church a reality. And in this One Holy Trinity card, we have tried to capture the essence for each one. At the bottom, it says personal and confidential, which we personally get an envelope, which I'll show you later, that we give on Stewardship Sunday, which we have usually on the second Sunday in November, prior to the end of the year. where we show people what our church is called on to give and how they might help in their own personal treasures to offer. On the back, those are the back pages. We have some pictures. Inside are these 3 folds. Now, you can do this simply on the front and back of a card. We have 3 elements. We have our treasure on the left side where it shows stewardship. Our goal, one Holy Trinity goal for stewardship, is to fully fund the church's operating costs. For the 300-some families that are members here, that's $624,000 for 2018. Right underneath is my or our 2018 pledge in a line, and people there enter onto this form what they pledge their treasure to the church. There's a little chart underneath as a guide that shows stewardship as on a basis of family income. The average family income in America of American family is around $57,000. We had a $50,000 line, $75,000 and up. And we also show people as a framework, as a percentage of their income, 1, 2, 3, 5, and the magic number 10%, which God calls on us to tithe to his church and his mission. And we see reference points there for people to use as a guide. So as there's a scripture line under there from Luke, as well as a signature line for both a spouse and the other spouse to sign. On the next section, we have our church's mortgage, which was 1.2 million, which is now 1.1 million. We're making great progress in that guide. And we have a mortgage payoff. Again, another treasure contribution. Only about 40 of our members had pledges left to pay off our mortgage, but yet there were 300-some families here benefiting from our facility. So we put this center section in to pay off the mortgage. If a parish already has its mortgage paid off, you might have your capital maintenance fund here or your capital campaign for a new community center or church there as a center section. Here, the goal was eliminate the church's mortgage by 2020. I believe that we'll be able to do that through the sources that we're dedicating. Only about 55 families are pledging. We only had 40 last year. We had 15 more step up, and we hope to have that number hit much higher this year. There's places for them to pledge for 1 year or for the next 2 years, and they can put the dollar amount right there and sign. You can see that the mortgage was not funded, so we're encouraging and showing people the needed from 300 families who have not yet contributed. 55 families had. So we're showing people, are you in with giving to your church to pay for its structure or mortgage, or you're not? On the third column that Father is showing here is the time and talents. These are the 30 ministries of Holy Trinity. Each parish will have their own ministries. Most of the parishes have many of these ministries, from acolytes, and you can sign up with offering your time and talents for you or your children or your spouse. The first column is for the husband, the second column for the wife, and you can check those boxes if you would like someone to attend Greek school, the youth ministries, the summer camp, etc. There's personal information to list your name, your spouse, your address, city, and your children, and whether they're Orthodox or not, and their birth dates. Pretty simple on the bottom. This format we can give you. On this next page, you'll see the One Holy Trinity stewardship, the mortgage elimination, and the ministries. This is the essence. We publish this in our Herald, which Father publishes every month or two, and we publicize the card. We let people know they're going to get this. There's an example, listing I signed as the chair, and Father signs in there. And then we publicize this, hand these cards out on Stewardship Sunday, right in the sanctuary after the sermon, and then we engage. And as people leave the service, we have cards in the back, and we hand people their cards as they leave the sanctuary. We do that for 3 weeks, and then we actually move along to mail out the remaining cards for people who haven't attended or gotten their cards personally. And then we look for those cards to come back, hopefully by the end of the year or early in the year, and then we have our pledge. Three last points to make on here. We do personal thank you cards, personal thank you letters. It's a one-page letter, very simple, just 3 or 4 lines, where we thank each person who has pledged within a week or 2 weeks after they've pledged. We personalize a letter to Mr. and Mrs. John Pappas. And it has a small scripture in it. It thanks them for their commitment of their own personal treasure to the church. And then the stewardship chairman, which is currently Mike, and co-chair Ted, personally sign these letters. And if you know something about them, like if it was my Sunday school teacher 50 years ago, I thank them for their service, or I thank them for their service in Philippians, or the food festival, or whatever they're doing. One little note takes 40 seconds for the stewardship chair to write. It was the most effective single tool that I found that I had. People responded dramatically, being very thankful that they were not just acknowledged, but they were personally thanked for their own ministry, time, and talent contributions. We also publish a thank you list, alphabetical listing of all the pledged stewards. We put that in a bulletin maybe every other month. So from Anestas down to Zozos, or A to Z, we just list people not by dollars, whether they gave $25, $100, $1,000, or $10,000. We just do an alphabetical listing, regardless of size, of all of our pledge members. And some people are incentivized to enter a pledge card because after 2, 3, 4, 5 months and their name's not on the list, they say, hey, Petritas isn't on the list. I should be on the list. So you submit a pledge card, and that little stick, if the carrot doesn't work, sometimes the stick does. So the thanking of them is good. The stewardship co-chairs, we personally thank people in the gallery after church or in the community center for submitting it. It's all confidential. Only the stewardship chairs know what the dollar amount of the pledge is, and the private church secretary who keeps it completely confidential. So no one in the church knows what anyone else is pledging. It's all confidential. Lastly, there's a quarter-end account statement that the church secretary assembles and issues out in a mailing, so you can see that at the end of the first or second or third quarter, I have pledged $1,000 or $500, and my contributions have been X. Then you can see how far along you are, and it's a mindful quarterly reminder of somebody, what's there. And then on Stewardship Sunday, these cards go out. So anyway, hope that's helpful, and I wish you all the best in your stewardship drives. Next would be Mike Cridios.
Thanks, Charlie. So the ultimate goal is to go to the point where Charlie was making, and Father earlier, to grow stewardship in as far as dollars. Or is it? You know, there are a lot of things that we need to do right before people will start opening their pocketbooks. And you know, some people say the most sensitive muscle on a person is their pocketbook. So how do you go about doing that? You know, there was a recent Gallup poll that showed parishioners in 3 categories. They're either engaged, they're not engaged, or they're actively disengaged, right? That's a pretty harsh one. So engaged were found to be at 16% of the total. Not engaged, 49% of the total, and actively disengaged, 35%. So automatically 84% of our parishioners, if we have a typical church, 84% are either not engaged, which means they're not really satisfied entirely with the church, or they're only using it for social gathering, or actively disengaged, which means they're often unhappy. They come to church a couple of times, Christmas and Easter, and they don't really continue to be a part of the church throughout the year. And we see that, you know, a lot of us notice that the 16% might be a little harsh. I mean, we're blessed with some actively abundance and giving in our church. And I think it has to do with what we're talking about tonight. It has to do with more than money. It has to do with being a community of givers, but also a community of friends and family. So how do you start with becoming that? You know, Charlie mentioned the pledge card first, and I wanted to just follow up a little bit on that. The side of the pledge card that shows the time and talents is one that we can actually perforate and take off the card, because the rest of it is confidential. The time and talents, though, it's not a confidential piece. It's actually something that needs to be shared. And if we just keep it on the card, it's really useless, right? I mean, that needs to be given out to the appropriate committees so they can follow up. So what we've tried to do, and this is one of our weaknesses up to this point that we need to improve, and we're making some forward steps, is to have someone actually log in those talents and time commitments. These people are actually actively saying, I want to help with the Greek school. I want to help with the festival. I want to help with stewardship. If you don't really follow up on that, that's the easiest, step to really take advantage of, and then commit more people to the church. So allow these people to use these God-given gifts to contribute to the community. Bring out the best of them, and then they will give back to you, tenfold. We've seen that many times. We give them opportunities to serve and invite new ideas, and then suddenly we have a lot of new opportunities. You see behind me the Connect Center. This is a new outreach that this church just came up with, because someone said one day we wanted to do a hospitality and a welcoming committee. And that became a small group of people. Then it became a larger group of people. Now we have how many in hospitality in visitation? 20, over 20, maybe 30 people who are going to and visit people. And then they man the station and invite more people to sign up. And each one of us from each committee has a handout. So when someone says, I don't really understand what stewardship does, or I'm not really sure what Focus Pittsburgh outreach means, there's always a handout. There's always someone we can say, go talk to Mike, go talk to Charlie. He's right in the back. Have some coffee, sit down and discuss this. The personal touch, I can express more strongly how that is the most effective way to attract people. You have to actually go to people, not just send them a letter. Those help too, and the supporters do appreciate to be recognized, obviously. But the personal, individual touch is the most effective in getting people to work together. And nobody really says no to us when we actually go to them and say, can you help me with this? 99.9% of the time, you will get people to sign up. We've had, this committee, I think, has had the most success because we've done this. We went to actual people who we knew they had strengths that we were lacking, such as a millennial who has a lot of experience in tech, and she signed up right away. Someone who's a new parishioner who relates to new parents, or the ones who came from a converted Orthodox family. People like that who really relate to people are the ones you need to approach personally and ask them to help. And not only would they help you, but they'll also bring others along, and it multiplies, and your blessings will be there for sure. The other thing I wanted to point out is you need to erase the financial class of people who are in your church. Otherwise, you start splitting people up. Don't try to get people are the high donors and just ignore the other ones. Be all inclusive in your work together. Expand the circle of the few leaders to make larger circle of more leaders. Split up the work. We each have strengths and weaknesses. So the more you have on your committees and in your church working together, the stronger you become. Build trust. That's the most important part of stewardship. You know, we ask people to really donate to something they will have to believe in. But for them to believe in that, they have to believe in you. And we need to be very, very strong in our beliefs and very consistent in them. Don't be shy in saying how you feel about it. And sermonettes, you know, during Gospels, when there is a meaningful message about stewardship, Father is always welcoming us up to the front, and we speak to the entire parish about what stewardship means to us. And you see later on with Ted's session how people really come forward and actually really become very personal in their experience in stewardship here. Involve every group, age group. I think I mentioned that before, but that's very important. Look at the age groups in your church. Make sure that they're all included in your messaging and in your committee membership. Otherwise, you start thinking that people are in cliques, you know, and you don't want to do that. Add surveys. Surveys tell you how people think, especially the anonymous surveys, and you know, be open to criticism and make changes quickly. Change directions. Develop annual goals. Every year we need to get together in the beginning of the year and we develop our goals for the next 12 months, even longer term, and be accountable to it. You know, we present to the parish council and to the council of ministries our goals, and every quarter we give them an update. How are we doing compared to our goals? Are we meeting target? Not just financial again, but also in just growth of our church. Have we given people enough opportunity to serve? Anything like that, really, and to the people themselves, they really see their work being rewarded. Then you have to look at people who are on the ledge, so to speak. You know, people who have maybe they were more involved in the past, but now they're kind of pulling back. That's the danger point. So you know, you see that first with their money. They gave more before, now they're giving less. Maybe they haven't even pledged in a couple of years. If you have enough people who know these people personally, approach them and see how they're feeling, and if there's a way you can help them, bring them back to the church. This is all part of stewardship, obviously, but it doesn't have anything to do with money, but eventually will, because when people get more engaged, they feel more personal, they see improvement, they hear their voices being heard, and understand where we do come from, you know, by just talking to, in a personal touch. The last thing is start them young. You know, go to the Sunday school classes, talk to the students, invite them to a stewardship program, have them lead stewardship events. Our Goyans just started an interesting thing about the bag of change, you know, where they're all encouraged to save their change in the bag. So they will follow that old Greek adage of fasuli me fasuli yanisido sakuli, you know, bean by bean, the bag will get filled up. And they will present it to the church when we have our 95th anniversary in a few months. So by that, they feel the responsibility and the encouragement and then the satisfaction of doing that for the church. And as they grow and grow up, they become better stewards. So keep it consistent. Don't give it up. It takes a long time to get from point A to point B. We're not in the microwave business, as they say, we're in the crock pot business. So just take it slow, but be consistent, be persistent, be inclusive, allow participation, let people feel good about what they do, and you'll be successful. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Wow, we've heard a lot of information. If I could leave you with two things tonight, I think that all of us would like to leave you with is two things. Stewardship is personal, and stewardship is a connection. What we have tried to convey here at Holy Trinity is that on the personal aspect of it,
it is a response to God, a personal response to God that you are giving back. It's a reflection of what he's already given to you. So you're taking those resources, your time, your talents, and your treasures, and you're giving back to God. That's what we have tried to convey. That's the secret in the mix, is that if people walk away with an understanding that, hey, you know what? This is about my relationship with God. How has God blessed me? If I look back on my life, if I look back on the lives of my family members, of all the things that he has done, shouldn't I respond appropriately to that? And how do I respond? I respond via my time, I respond via my talents, and the treasures. So that not only to my church, but those resources then that are provided to the church will continue to outreach in the community. So that's the personal side of it. How we tried to capture that personal component of stewardship is through various communications that we send out in the Herald that Father publishes every month. And we went around and we thought, you know what? Who are we going to reach? We have the face of Holy Trinity has many faces in terms of young, in terms of senior, in terms of ethnicities. So we wanted to make sure that we captured that. And we were able to actually represent a voice so that someone can relate to. When I came here to Holy Trinity, I was looking for what I could relate to based on my own personal experience. So I gravitated to those first that I could respond to. I gravitated to those that had a familiar face. I gravitated to those that had a familiar story. So what we tried to do in our communications is reach out and to say, you know what, would you mind sharing your story? And our first story that's coming up here that you can see on the screen is from Sherry. Sherry, like myself, didn't grow up in an Orthodox community. We grew up in other Christian communities. So she was one that we knew that could be responsive in reaching out to other people who were filling those same shoes. Sherry talked about being what stewardship meant to her, supporting the blessings of being an Orthodox Christian. And as you can read in that story there are many areas of her life that she touched on. The goals of being faith, family, and community. We want that to resonate with each and every parishioner here. So that's Sherry's story, and Sherry's story was very powerful, and she continues to be alive, an active member and resonating in the life of the church. Our next, we want to reach our millennials. We have a ton of millennials. We have a ton of young people, and young people are the future of the church. So we reached out to Alexander, who is also a member of our stewardship committee, as Mike alluded to. We wanted to have representation in that regard as well. Here's a young woman who had grown up in the Orthodox Church, who was strong and vibrant. And so we wanted to hear and share her story with the rest of the community so that she could, and that story could then impact other millennials, across the community. Our next story that we're coming across that Father's bringing up is in relation to yet another millennial couple. This couple, Nico and Stephanie, are very active in the church in terms of worship, in terms of the festival. You see their faces around. They're also outside in the community doing, I should say, having an extension of their stewardship. So we see Nico and Stephanie doing great things, and we know that there are other people who look like them, and we wanted to make sure that their story was heard. Our next story again represents, this is Rick, oh my gosh, this is Rick and Doreen and their family, and they're very dear to our heart. Rick is actually also a member of our stewardship committee. Doreen is very active with components of the visitation ministry, et cetera, and the arms that extend from that. Their children, which we know that are growing up and will become vibrant members and contributors of this ministry as well. So here's another couple that shared their story, which is very powerful. Talked about their faith, talked about what stewardship means to them. And lastly, here we're talking about, we wanted to get representation from our seniors. Anthony and Helen Valores, who are lifelong Holy Trinity stewards, who have been here, from the,
Almost the inception.
Yes, from the inception. So, this is a very strong, active, they're visible, and we wanted to hear their story because it not only impacts people of their age bracket, but it also impacts those younger in knowing what this is a good representation of what it means to be an active steward in your church here at Holy Trinity. So these were representations. This is the personal component. This is what we were trying to convey to our stewardship family, that it's personal, and you need to make it personal. If you talk about numbers and that's all you're talking about, and you're talking about we need, people want to understand why they're doing things. Why do you want me to do this? Well, we want you to do it because we feel that you need to respond in accordance with how God has blessed you. So that's the personal side. The connect side, Mike alluded to it earlier. In the background, you'll see our connect banner, and this actually was started as an offshoot of the visitation ministry. So we have Stacy and Mary Ellen who have put this entire thing together. There is a wealth of information from the ministries of Holy Trinity Church. We have what is the Connect? Connect is a share in the life of the church. It talks about it's a visible resource. This is located in our gallery after every divine liturgy. It's manned by people, Stacy and Mary Ellen, myself, and others that we're recruiting in Holy Trinity, talking about worship, talking about hospitality, teaching, outreach, stewardship, fellowship. When they come here, it's not just for new members, because I'll tell you this, we've had even those who have been at this church for a long time. And when they pick up the information and they look and they see all the different ministries, they're like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that this was available. And so they see that. We have a contact sheet which lists who is responsible over each ministry, from the Acolytes to the Agape Fund, the Capital Campaign, Church School, etc. There's names, there's phone numbers, there's emails for people to reach out. So when we say, hey, you need to talk to Charlie, you need to talk to Mike, you need to talk to Joyce, Stacy, whomever, they'll actually know who these people are, and they can actually reach out to them via this contact. So that's the connect. So if we're summing this all up, stewardship is about the personal component, it's about the connect component. And we want to make sure that people have opportunities to connect. We want to make sure that they're responding in a personal way, in touch. And that's essentially the essence of our stewardship ministry. Make it personal, help people connect, show them how to connect, where to connect. And the engagement will continue to grow. So we thank you for your time. We thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. And bottom line, may God continue to receive all the glory, honor, and praise.
Amen. I'm going to take this podium out of the way so that we can get ourselves comfortable for questions and answers here. And Stacy, I believe you have some questions for us. I believe perhaps some from the last seminar and some from this one. And we'd love to answer those for you.
Yes, absolutely. One of the questions was with regard to average stewardship pledge being more than $1,000 per family. Talk about what the median amount is. There's a difference between an average and a median, and I don't know if you would be willing to address that.
I think I answered that the last time, or maybe I'll do it again. Yes, there is a difference between average and median, as we know. So if we had a very equal split between our stewards and their pledging amounts, then we would have had the median being equal to the average. But unfortunately, the median is only about $600 at this point. And the reason being is that about 60% of our parishioners are given less than $580 a year. I'm just using that as the example. So because there's such a high percent of the low-end parishioners and a low number of the high-end parishioners, the median becomes much lower than the average. The goal, obviously, is to become an equal amount of median and average. And that's what we're trying to do now. When I mentioned earlier that it's important to know who is falling off stewardship and how they're declining in stewardship amounts, that's when you really have to do some preventive measures and, really approach people early on, and also make that obvious to people that, 20% of our families are supporting 80% of our expenses. And that is really not fair to you to bear the burden. We're all here equally, there is no advantage of one over the other. Some of us are blessed with more financial strength, and that's obviously going to be always the case. But when you look at the chart that we had in the pledge card that shows that, at $75,000 or $80,000, the average pledge at 1%, 750 and 800, most people fall within that range. Very few nowadays are going to be in the low end. So if you're not giving 1% of your income to the church at 750 or 800 or 900 or whatever that might be, which is the case in most people that are on the low end, then we really have an issue, and that needs to be addressed. You need to be honest, and again, using just the honesty and the trustworthiness that you have with your people, and say, this is where we stand. Show them, where the numbers are.
Two points that's spot on, and 2 points that Father John brought up. When Holy Trinity launched in 92, 93 from an all dues 200 family, roughly $210 or $200 all dues system, and converted to stewardship, literally doing away completely with dues. And the first year it was up 20% from $40,000 to $48,000. That went from $2 to $240 when there was no dues, quote unquote, tax on the parishioners. So today at 1,160 or 80, we're roughly fivefold. Obviously, incomes have not gone up fivefold since 1993, but Holy Trinity's average pledge has gone up. As Mike really eloquently said, the median is more like 550 or 580, meaning the 50th percent, the middle of the parishioners is giving around 550 to 600. And Mike has that chart in the One Holy Trinity brochure where we show incomes at 50 or 75,000 or 100,000 or more. And we have on the left side, on the vertical axis, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10% of income. And if we were to critique Holy Trinity's stewardship, we're getting about 360,000 total, 320 pledged and another 40 to 50 non-pledged stewardship contributions. And if you took that at 1150, if the in our community, let's say we're an average community and have a 57 an average parish income, that means the average Holy Trinity parishioner is giving 2% of their income to their church. Now, that's 5 times what it was 25 years ago. Okay, maybe people's incomes have doubled in 25 years, but their pledges, their stewardship have gone up fivefold because of what Ted and Mike spoke to, the personal involvement in the life of the church, the ministries, the vision that Father talked about. Why are we here? Why we're blessed and why we should give. So if you lead with the dollars, as Ted said, it's sort of here's another person asking for something from my wallet. If you get the personal engagement through the connection, it really builds. And it took 25 years to go from 2 to 240 to 260 to 300 and so on. But I can honestly say there's been no year where the average pledge went down. Correct. And it's gone up every year because of more personal involvement.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to look to the chat here. I've got a couple of questions for you. And one of them centers on language. I think, Father John, you touched on this earlier. Stewardship is always stewardship. And this is a little bit about the language of stewardship. Do you ever address with parishioners how much they're spending in other facets of their life? Not in a judgmental way, but I mean in their bills, their cell phone bills, their cable, other monthly expenses. How do you address that, or do you address that in contrast to stewardship? And that's a question from one of our listeners.
Yes, we have addressed it in various articles in our in the Herald that are published. We have addressed that. We've approached it truthfully. In relation to, hey, look, you're going on vacation. You're putting all these other things before God, but He's the one that supplied all of these resources in your life. Shouldn't those resources be allocated to Him first? And then, as He gives you the remainder to do all these other things. So we're helping people to understand the prioritization of what God has given them. And that first and foremost, when He does give it, when you are paid, He should be the first one that receives the response from you. And, whether in your tithe, if it's 5, 10%, He's giving you that remainder to do that. So yes, we have communicated that in our bulletins. We have communicated that in our Herald publication. And when we get the opportunity to talk to people personally, we do that as well.
And that also, at least from the pulpit, oftentimes needs to be used with a lot of discretion and sometimes somewhat subtly, because Stacy, you used the word judgment in there, and oftentimes people will receive that as some sort of a judgment or comparison. Having the full spiritual connection to the rest of this, all the appeals, you want to make sure that this is being generated out of love for Christ, love for the church, the thankfulness for our blessings, and people will respond to that. They generally won't respond with being beat over the head or being told they're not good because they're spending money on this instead of that. And Mike and Ted and Charlie have been excellent about that, because what they have done is really more or less just drop seeds for thought, food for thought, really not criticizing anyone, but just encouraging them to think first about their church.
The treasure that Ted eloquently spoke to, how we prioritize our own treasure given to us through God reflects who we are as people and as Christians. And if we prioritize our church and God last as the remainder, it's a reflection of that we have our priorities in the wrong order. So from a messaging point of view, just prioritizing our treasure, which is given to us by the graces and the blessings of God, is the lead message that Mike and Ted speak to.
It has to be a first fruits giving, and not, another line item in your family budget. You're right. We're talking about Thanksgiving and appreciation and for everything that we're given in our lives. Another question, and this is kind of a two-parter for you all at Holy Trinity to talk about. The question is, are there churches in our metropolis that are not dependent on festivals as a part of their operating budget? I can't speak to our metropolis specifically. Nationwide, it's something like 92% of all of the churches of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese are reliant on festivals for their operating budget. Father John, whomever is appropriate, will you talk a little bit about your festival, what it means to you now, and what your future plans are with regard to it?
These gentlemen all are actively involved, as are all of their families, so I'm going to let them speak to that. But let me just tell you that it is my fervent prayer, and it is the stated goal of this community, from the parish council to the General Assembly to the Stewardship Ministry, that when we come back in a future webinar, hopefully we will be sharing with you that we are festival free on our budget. It is an actively pursued goal here at Holy Trinity Church, and not just a fantasy. So I hope and pray that we will be one of the ones that gets there sooner than later. And I won't give the absolute goal of the date, but let me just tell you, it is a community shared and embraced goal. So who wants to speak otherwise?
Well, we said that as part of our goals that we established, that is kind of our strategic planning was in the next 5 years to be totally funding the operating budget of this church through our stewardship. meaning that, there's more than just the envelope, but anything that the parishioners will create out of their willingness to give will be what this church will be operating on. Festival and catering and all the other income then will just be freed up to do the right thing that we're here to do. We're not here, God didn't plant us in this spot to pay bills and to serve Sublaki, only just to turn it around and pay the mortgage. So I'm sure that, that message that we started is going to really take hold, and it's already becoming a pretty good kind of an underlying goal for everyone to do the next 5 years, along with paying off the capital, and then we'll become debt free, basically. Although we understand we're going to have expenses no matter what. But the festival is not a totally evil spirit, obviously. We have a lot of people who come together to do this festival. So I just want to bring up the fact that we actually had new parishioners join this church in the last 2 years because they came to our festival and saw how this community works together and how we really are having fun doing this. So, like to do the festival. Is growing by leaps and bounds in this new location. We are funding the operations of this church through it. It's going to, hopefully, God willing, be put into better use through our missions in the future.
Let me second that, Mike's note there, because just a few weekends ago, I was able to baptize an entire family, father, mother, and 2 children, and their first encounter with Holy Trinity Church was our festival. And so that's just another fruit of that. People come through for church tours. We really do more than just serve food. We really embrace them. As Mike said, people are very impressed by the entire community. Actually, our vision statement for this community that we live in every aspect is faith, family, community. And when people walk in the door, that's what they see, that's what they experience. So please never underestimate the true value of a festival. We shouldn't look at it, as Mike said, as something less than holy. It's a part of the life of this church. And in fact, even though some will look at it financially and call it the crack cocaine of church finances in the Greek Archdiocese, Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, we rather like to look at it as something that is on the way to something greater. And I would challenge anybody who says festivals don't have a benefit to find a way to bring 25 to 30,000 people through your church in just a couple of days, which is what we did last year. So we can turn all things to God's glory.
As my father, to the numerical answer to your question, about 70% of our budget comes through our stewardship pledges, those who give to stewardship without signing the card, and the candles and trays. That's about 70% of Holy Trinity's operating budget, and about 30% currently is coming from festival and some hall rental income. And as Father John and Mike said, our goal, hopefully it will be a number of years away, but it will be here, is to get as close to 100% there so that our successful record festival income can go not just to maintain the facility as it wears, but to do mission work within our community and outside the community. That's the goal that we're working toward.
Excellent. And I agree. And I would say, I don't know that it's a recent phenomena, but in the last 10 years, it seems that they're making more information available and, asking them after a church tour if they're interested, highlighting books and information for people who are seeking. So you're right. You're on the leading edge of that trend. There you go. And I would also say to you that your parish is on the right side of the equation when it comes to stewardship income versus festival income. Nationally, it's ideal to be about 2/3 stewardship income and 1/3 other, whether that's festival, social hall rental, et cetera, et cetera. So you're definitely on the right side of that equation. Unfortunately, I would say probably 80% of our Metropolis is not. That equation is flipped, where they're getting about a third of their income from stewardship and 2/3 from outside sources. So I don't want to belabor that point because there are a couple more questions that have come in. We're going to switch gears a little bit. And Father, you talked about Stewardship Sunday. Will you just sort of go back over how you plan that time of year and getting people to bring their pledge cards completed and the run up to it? Typically, what time of year do you do that? In early November, mid-November?
Yeah, we start planning it actually in the summertime because the materials have to be developed. And then we actually launch it in November. I'll speak from the pulpit side of things, and that is that has to be integrated. Everything that we do has to be a synergy between clergy and laity, all parts of the community. So I speak to that from sermons, from sermons to adults, sermons to children, and various other opportunities. But I'm going to leave it to the team here to tell you about our mechanisms, which are always being fine-tuned. I mean, we would love to launch it a little bit earlier than we do. Some communities have a goal of having all their pledges for the next year in before the end of the year. That would be great for planning purposes, but let me let them speak to it.
Yeah, if you're early in the stages of stewardship, it's more important to maybe get people to understand what Stewardship Sunday means. So it's good to have an event around it and have things that are informational. So that makes it kind of a chance to get people together to talk about what this is about, how to complete the stewardship card, to make sure that they understand the levels that we're projected to achieve. The treasury can speak about the next year's budget, but also it's a kind of an overall summary of what the expectations are, in the church. So we've done this before in a lot more detail, and then people are kind of becoming more accustomed to it. I think we kind of became a little bit passive in just doing Stewardship Sunday the way that we've done it in the last few years. We pick a Sunday that usually has a message to the gospel. And Father always says, the father of the church know what they're doing. There's usually a gospel in November that talks about stewardship.
Absolutely.
So then we kind of come up to the front of the church because you have the captive audience before everybody leaves, before they scatter. And we talk about why this is an important event, what the next year holds, how we all need to stay together, how to improve together, how to grow together, and have something as a kind of a pep rally. And then they get their envelopes on their way out to the coffee hour. Then we continue on with messaging through the bulletin and the Herald, our newsletter, to say, have you completed your card? We've experienced a high increase in stewardship averages. Are you part of the growth? Join us. All kinds of little tidbits, little boxes in the Herald that actually mean others are ahead of us. Let's hurry up and send a card in. In March, we're going to publicize the names of the donors. Is your name on it? If it's not, if you don't see your name on this page, remember your pledge card. If you don't have a pledge card, we have extras. So that Sunday becomes the kickoff of the process. But I do know that some churches, and I think we might try this in the future, maybe this year. I haven't talked to you guys yet. On Stewardship Sunday, they actually provide the envelopes in advance, and Stewardship Sunday is when you return your pledge, and it becomes more of a congregational event. And you start from the front of the church, the parish council, the priests, the committee, all make the contributions, put them in a big basket, and then we continue down each row, and everyone brings in their pledge card that day. So in that respect, you start ahead of the curve. You have those cards on the day that you're actually supposed to do the messaging at the same time. So it's kind of a kill two birds with one stone.
On Stewardship Sunday that Mike talked to here, and Father said, we do it on the second Sunday of November from
Okay.
the parish. But we actually, I'm biased, but I think Ted's as good of a spokesman as we have on personalizing the story. Ted gets up there. They've called me to do a minute, and we're talking very short, a 60, 90-second testimony. Yeah, maybe I'll speak to thanking people for being involved on 25, 30 people visiting our shut-ins, and how the increases in your pledges for the first time are allowing $2,000 to go to support the work of the visitation ministry. Another, the summer camp for children. If we're helping get children that do not have the resources of summer camp, we have an allocation now from the increase in the stewardship pledges, helping kids get to summer camp. So we make it very personal, and then we personally, again, those thank you letters, very simple, that are personalized by Mike and Ted, extremely effective when they know that you care to take the time, even if it's 45 seconds, to thank your people and your parishioners personally with a simple thank you for your support and pledge to Holy Trinity. And you sign it, and it's personal, and it comes within a week or two after they've pledged. Exceptional feedback from that. People want to give.
Stacy, if I may take over with screen sharing here and follow up what Charlie said. If one of the very powerful things that you have to use is, as they were talking about, was communications. And we have actually our website at holytrinitypph.org. And actually very prominently on the front page is some information on stewardship. So you'll see as you scroll down that Stewardship at Holy Trinity Church is always a front page article. Also, you'll see if you go into multimedia and video gallery, you can actually see some examples. Like this happens to be Charlie on November 17th, 2016, when he was introducing our Stewardship 2017 program and the One Holy Trinity program. So you can see how that was done there, as well as there are a couple of other presentations on there. But wanted to let you know about that. Also, it's really important to keep stewardship prominent on the website in other ways. So, for example, there is the online giving information, so you can learn about online giving. You can also actually click on that, and you can go to the online giving page, and that opens up an opportunity for you to actually donate. Mike and Ted have set a goal of to actually be able to as well put online pledges very soon. And then, of course, all of that information from the Herald, which you saw there, is available. So if you go to news and you go to Holy Trinity Herald, you have, let's see, it's coming up here. So there's all the Heralds, and you can actually scroll through all of our old stewardship articles all the way back to 2001. The most recent one was just published in, actually was just mailed today, the March 2018 issue. So I would encourage parishes to use all of those resources because it keeps it upfront and easily accessible.
Yeah. Father, a very quick question. I hope your website is content rich. Do you manage it yourselves internally and update it?
Yeah, we do. We actually have people that help us out with that. I'm involved with it as well. Whether it's providing content, all those videos are done by a wonderful steward of our parish who's actually heading into college as a media consultant or developer, and so she is doing that as her stewardship contribution to the church.
Wonderful.
It's easier to do it that way.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to go back to two quick questions that are related. One, I often hear from parishes that there is fatigue for completing a stewardship card every year. And I've even heard Father Evan Armatas from Colorado say that there is a kind of a coming wave of evergreen stewardship or stewardship that each steward will manage for him or herself, so that, you know, they're not having to complete a card every year. So I guess my questions, mine is, how do you handle that sort of fatigue? And then one of the questions from one of our viewers is, how do you handle parishioners who are willing to give to the parish, but absolutely refuse to complete a stewardship card? You know, I know we have 40 or so of those in our parish. But go ahead, please.
I'll take the second question of how do we handle people who are either fatigued or elect not to sign a stewardship pledge card. When I first became stewardship chairman, following Mike and then Mike's return and with Ted, I quickly learned that when I went to people who did not submit a card, they had their own reasons. They all vary. They didn't want to commit. They just didn't know what their incomes would be. Their personal circumstances were variable, and so on. So technically, if you sign the pledge card, you are a member of the community, and you have the right to vote at the General Assembly, and we encourage that, and it's of record. But of course, we gladly receive the stewardship pledges of the non-pledge. In our community, something like 270 people actually sign the pledge card. So I haven't seen a fatigue issue in our community. I think the fatigue issue is more of an excuse because it literally takes 2 minutes to complete the card. So if 2 minutes of writing your name and signing it, putting a number down is fatigue, then, you know, that sort of speaks to where people prioritize the church.
And they online.
And the online is literally a minute or two to complete the online pledge. Now, the non-pledge members, outside of, they are some, you could choose, it depends, not to publish them as stewards, because technically they're not. That's up to the parish if they, I guess, publish their names or not. I believe, do we publish the names of all stewards pledged?
Only pledge cards.
We published the 270 names of individuals and families and thank them. But some people don't care if their name's published, that's fine. I'm sure other churches may elect to put people in even if they don't do the card. That's up to the parish, I assume. So that's how we handle that. About 320 or 25,000 of our pledges come in from the 270 families. Another maybe 45 to 50 members, 40 members come in with maybe another 30 to 50,000 in a given year of non-pledged amounts.
Here's a trick though for people who don't have the pledge card. Once you kind of weed out the ones that you know are having an issue or there's a personal problem, and we know sometimes they come to us and they say, I didn't sign a pledge card because of this. Taking those away, if you have a parish council member who's on the committee, just like Ted is, you can have him take the list with him to the Bangari, to the front, you know, as people walk in, because they're the people who actually welcome the parishioners too. And with extra pledge cards, and say, hey, Mike, you know, I just realized that, you know, you didn't really have your pledge card completed. And if you forgot, fine, I just want to remind you, if you have any issues, please talk to me. And if you don't have your pledge card anymore, here's a new one. Here's an extra one. So you'll be surprised how many people say, you know, I thought I turned it in. You're telling me I didn't. Okay, I'll take another one. Or, oh, I know, I forgot it. I probably won't find it. Give me another one. You know, maybe you'll catch about 20% of your non-pledgers just by approaching them coming to the church.
As Mike says, if you personally ask, there's a pretty high 90+% shot that people are going to say yes.
Yeah, yeah. Some people don't understand that they have to pledge every year still. After 20-some years of stewardship, they don't understand that.
And after a few years of leading the stewardship effort, I invited Ted and Mike to dinner, and I shanghaied them with buying them dinner, and they're now the chairs of the committee.
Plastic bag and a hammer.
Yeah.
That's a thing of beauty.
Yes, it's expensive for them.
Another question that I'd like to pose to all of you. So you talk about a very high touch, personal stewardship program. The question is, how do you reach those parishioners that are either unengaged or disengaged, and are not likely to be in church on most Sundays? Can you give some guidance about, some of your best practices with regard to that?
Some of those things that we actually do. So, for instance, I may not personally, Mike may not personally, which I kind of find Mike knows everybody, and Charlie will, but we try to capitalize on those people that do know them, and maybe it's through a touch point. So maybe they're not coming to church. Maybe there's a reason why they're not coming. So maybe that's part of the visitation ministry that we can actually say, you know what, maybe they need to visit to find out what's going on there. So we'll connect with that. We'll also connect with someone in the church who may physically just know them and find out what's going on. Hey, such and such is not coming. Have you seen them? Do you know what's going on? So we'll gather intel from that to make a decision. And then once we have that intel, we'll then formulate a plan through one of the various other ministries, whether it's below the house, whether it's visitation, whether it's the church school, maybe somebody in there knows them. So to reach out, and that's the essence of our connect, is sharing in the life of the church. So it's not just the stewardship committee's responsibility to do this. We feel that it's everyone's responsibility, and we try to incorporate based on those resources we have there.
Also, just because someone doesn't come to church doesn't mean they don't love their church or don't want to be in church. One of the other things I'd encourage you to invest in is the idea of online broadcasts. So again, I'll show you our website here very quickly, and you'll see that simply by going to multimedia and live broadcast, every time we have a service, you can receive the service online, either video or an audio connection, and listen to it. We get donations all the time from people that can't come to church and actually watch online. We also have our visitation ministry, which is, again, 25 or 30 people that go out, they write cards, they do visitations, they offer a prayer list, they send gifts and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways to touch as many people as you can. And when Ted is talking about the Connect Center, which is right now this banner and this set of information, I think also it's a really interesting, all of these gentlemen, actually all of us, have wives and families that are very involved in the life of the church. The beautiful banner over there was designed by Ted's son, who's actually living in California now. Tony did a beautiful job. Ted, can you just please comment about the photo, because that's significant. I looked at this the first time. I said, oh, nice professional banner. You just got that stock photo from somewhere, but that's not the story. Ted?
Yeah, the story of the hands is that those hands are our own parishioners' hands, and they're representing various people throughout the community. So, for instance, this top hand over here, just to point out, this was Mr. Belors' hand, and he was one of our Stewardship Herald article submissions, him and his wife, Helen, and her hand is represented there as well. And we have various people from our from youth to our Connect ministry, our visitation ministry, all the way around. So it's just a symbol of sharing in the life of the church and a connection of everyone here that is represented across the various aspects of Holy Trinity.
And our official logo, which is down below the picture, is actually also was done by a parishioner at the time who has since moved on to another area of the country, but it was professionally designed. She's a graphic artist, and so that's used everywhere to identify the church.
Wonderful. I had a question, now I lost it.
What are you thinking?
How? No, I've got my question, and I'll get it out, and I apologize. The recruiting, for lack of a better word, of people to be subject of, the profiles in the Holy Trinity Herald and that kind of thing, how hard or easy is that to get people to share those personal stories? A lot of people may say, I love my church and I support it in as many ways as I can, time, talent, and treasure, but I don't necessarily want to make that public. How do you find that effort?
It's really easy. I just say to Ted and Mike, the deadline is the 15th. Please be sure to have your article in. And somehow it just happens. It's really cool.
It's actually pretty easy.
All right.
You do have to be careful. Some people say no, I'd rather not, but there are quite a few who are okay with it, and you have to keep trying. But we do have, and then Ted is the one who chases most of them down now, and you have a backlog. You still, there are people who are
Waiting to submit.
when you have a good story to tell, and you don't have to be, you don't have to dig deep, but people would like to share.
Yeah.
I think you'll have a good time with finding people.
The other, and that's so true what Mike was saying. The other thing that we're trying to capitalize, last year it was a lot of personal stewardship and time talents. This year, we're trying to alternate that and also focus and highlight the various ministries. So, for instance, whether it's cemetery, whether it's visitation, children's school, whatever. And so we're actually saying, hey, you know what? This is the talent portion of stewardship. And how would you address that? Or how would you communicate that to others in the church, for instance? Because those messages of stewardship and how the kids are being enriched, or how the visitation recipients are responding, what actually are they hearing? And people read that and like, oh my gosh, I didn't even really know we were doing that. And so we're getting responses from that. So the recruitment is persistence. The recruitment is personal and that relational. And that, in other words, we want to connect not only people here at Holy Trinity, but outside the community.
The ministry leaders and the ministry workers that are leading and working are rich sources. They generally will share, and if asked, I bet you get a 90% response rate from those people if you're having a challenge of getting someone to speak to the stewardship.
And you have to give them, you give them a list of questions to help them out.
Yeah, we give them a framework.
So they do have some help in giving their.
So you're not asking them to create something from nothing. You're giving them a framework.
Yeah,
And to get all of that out, again, don't ever underestimate, please, the power of your website and the power of your newsletter. Because remember, everybody will have a view of the community from where they stand, and that's what they see. But those two communications tools give you a chance to portray the entire life of the community. On our website, in the Herald, there are thousands of pictures over the years and stories, and it's just a way for, people perhaps come up and talk to people who wrote those articles. Oh, I saw you in the Herald last month. That was really cool. And yet they didn't even know their name before that. So it's just another way to grow community, another way to enlarge the family and develop those connections.
And get someone in your community. Ted, I think, is that person in our community, and Mike, who have a gift for speaking to time, talents, and treasures, and the grace of the blessings that we've all received. And they should write, and they will recruit, and they can do the features. Mike and Ted do this eloquently far better than I've been. I have not been given that grace.
That's a good point, though. You don't do the personal issues every month.
Right.
Give it a break. Get another subject out to the community. Use some other articles, and then throw in a personal approach.
Show the thermometer of how the bag or the facilities are being filled up. That here we are at Holy Trinity in 1992-3 with 40,000, and our goal is to get here, and now we're at 48,000 in year one. And show the thermometer filling up, and then thank those people and give the personal testimonies. When I was stewardship chairman and preceding them, we made an appeal, and people that were giving $25, $50, or $100, we had some of them double and triple what they were giving, and gave $200 and $300 from 50 and 100. because they saw the needs and they were living in the life of the church. And when they got that thank you note and the letter personalized, and they got a personal thank you from Ted and Mike or myself, they responded and they want to give.
Stacy, one other quick point is,
Please.
one article that was written in the Herald by Alexandra, she is now part of our stewardship committee, and she also now is recruiting other people to write articles, and she herself has incorporated articles that she has written. So
That's fantastic.
When that kind of growth also, I'll let you move on after this. When you have that kind of growth, share it. So for example, here, you can see these are actual, look at this graphic, these were actual increases.
Yeah.
And when people see that other people, the people in the seat next to them, and in the festival next to them, have raised their pledge 100%, 80%, 66%, 60%, it really is a motivating factor.
On Stewardship Sunday, I used these examples, and in my little 90 seconds, I literally didn't give a name, and it was anonymous, and I made a general description of these examples that, you know, these people, and, you know, somebody that was giving $500 increased it by 40%, you know, and they're now giving, you know, $700, and the $100 person tripled to 300, and again, it's why they're giving. It's not the tax. It's the blessing that they're passing back to God and their church.
but it registers on other people's minds.
I just want to pause for a second. So it is 8:32, and in being respectful of your time, especially since it's your time times 2 to all of us. You know, I understand if people need to drop off, that's all right. I don't really have too many more questions. I did miss one that came in that asked, what part of your total stewardship giving is done online? I don't know if you have any stats on that you can share or not.
It was zero about 3 years ago. So zero was 3 years ago. I would say it's developed to like 10 to 20 to maybe 30,000
Small.
of our total. So we're still probably between 6 and 9% of the total. Millennials do want to give that way. We were challenged to find a way for them to sign a pledge card online, because a lot of them don't like to do any paper. They don't have any checks. So they want to give over their phone or online. So for all of the parishes out there, recruit your millennial technologists and your millennial communicators, and give them the opportunity to serve and bring them into your stewardship effort, your drive.
Stacy?
Yes.
Yeah. Question from the last time around, it was about the personal approach. And I remember we shared this story that when we first started doing the stewardship ministry, we were sending out, we have software that allows us to generate a thank you letter for a pledge, not for donation, but for a pledge. And Charlie mentioned that he is doing that, and what tremendous results. Well, one of the great motivators we had was in the first early years of our stewardship ministry here, I received a phone call from an old Greek man. Him and his wife would come to church often, and he was a nice man, but I just got this call out of the blue. He says, Father John, I would like to see you. Can you come to my house? And I'm like, okay, that was a little scary because I was just new in the community, a young priest. So I go over and he sits down and he puts this letter down in front of me. He says, I want to show you this. And he pulls out the letter, and it was the thank you for your pledge letter. He says, I have never in my life received a thank you for just saying I'm going to give money instead of giving money. He was so impressed that somebody went out of their way to thank him for his dedication in that manner. He ended up giving us a $20,000 or $25,000 stock donation, which was one of the largest individual donations we had ever had at the time, at least from that point of view. And that was a great motivator for us, and really drove home the idea that people really do appreciate that constant personal touch and that constant thanks. So Charlie really capitalized on that. Mike and Ted are following through with it.
It takes work and personal commitment from your stewardship team. And that's why it shouldn't be one person. It has to be at least a co-chair, Ted and Mike. It was myself and Mary Ann. And then a small committee of highly energized, a communicator, an organizer, a foot soldier, It takes maybe another 3, 4, 5 in a committee, 6 minimum, 2 co-chairs. That's the structure that you should use to launch stewardship. And it takes the parish priest, in our case, Father John, who can speak as he does.
And Father Radu, who does excellent service.
Yeah, Father Radu, yeah. Father Radu, who really hits the point on the nail as well. So,
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I think not. I mean, I think we've hit all of the questions that I've been sent. We might not have hit all of the previous questions, but we've touched on. I think the only one we didn't touch on was talking about how do you include youth in stewardship. Now, you mentioned the millennials that are a part of your committee, but even younger than that, you know, Goya age, high school, early college. Is there any special attempt or program or anything that you do to reach that age group?
One of the ways that Mike briefly touched on is actually we have had a stewardship pledge card for the older church school students. So they actually have their opportunity to say, I'm going to offer this, and then keep track of that themselves over time. They're also throughout at least, you know, the young ones, the Joy and the Hope children will simply learn this sort of by osmosis of being around it all the time and hearing it. The Goyans, however, as they start to develop this idea of kind of ownership of things, that really has to be transformed into the idea of stewardship, as all blessings come from God. So there are many different opportunities and touch points that we have with them. Goya tithes from everything that they raise, their fund, they tithe and offer that to some sort of philanthropy or a ministry. So that's one way that they do as a group, and they make the choices to where that's going to go. Just use every opportunity, really. And there's a lot of good resources available from the Archdiocese as well, the Be the Bee videos and other ministries from the Youth Ministry Department.
No doubt. Well, with that, I think we're going to close, Father. We're about 10 minutes over, and I think everybody on the video conference needs time to digest. And I'll just say again to everybody participating, I'll get an email out with all of the materials that you've seen tonight. Give me until tomorrow morning in case I don't get it done tonight. I forget, there was something else I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was the question from the last seminar, actually. You left it out.
Which was that?
Is that a real fireplace? that actually was asked. Remember, that was.
It was indeed.
And so yes, indeed, it's a real fireplace. It's gas, but it is real.
But I do know, I was going to ask Ted, would you mind sharing that document that you use to prompt people in telling their personal stories? You know, I don't know if it's a few questions or a framework. You can discuss. You don't have to answer it right now.
Sure.
But that at least occurred to me as you were talking about it.
Yeah, I can email that.
And along with all the stuff you're going to email them, Stacy, you have all of the documents that we shared tonight. You can send them our website address.
Oh, yes.
TrinityPGH.org. You also are, all those that are online or listening to this are free to go onto that site and really borrow and adapt anything that's there, because we've done that from other communities, and all we're doing is simply sharing the blessings.
And if you go back far enough, you see that I actually interviewed Ted when he was speaking at church. He was our first entry to the Herald.
Ted's the Shanghai kid. He has been Shanghai for his nest in here. And it's an honor and a privilege to be a steward. I believe that thought for your church. So when you start with that, and Ted's right in the front of that.
But you can use the interview process, the interview model. And if you want to start with somebody and you have some, kind of pull back from people, you can actually say, I'll ask you a few questions, take it home, answer the questions, bring it back to us, instead of having that blank piece of page.
Sure.
So, with this being the season of Lent and time of forgiveness, we're going to all ask you for forgiveness for us running over a little bit. But as you can see, we're excited. They're energized. They love doing this work. They love talking about it. They love their church. And I'm so
No doubt. And bless them for it. And Father, will you bless us, please, with a closing prayer?
Yes. So even though this video may be seen at times outside of Lent, it is indeed the Lenten period. So let us call upon the help of the Lord of the powers, who is indeed our only hope. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord of the powers, be with us. For in times of distress, we have no other help but you, Lord of the powers, have mercy on us. Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Charlie, Ted, Mike, thank you so very much. And Father John, can't thank you enough for your willingness to do this a second time. And I hope we can share this far and wide. There's so much good information here, and your joy is obvious.
I hope it's
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.